Good afternoon, hope you had a good lunch. I'm going to talk to you for 25 to 30 minutes about security operations centres and try and do a bit of proactive take on it, hopefully. So Amar always gives me something interesting to try and talk to, and this time he's asked me to talk about why that the mantra protect, protect, protect might not be the only answer to cyber security. So I guess the background to that is that you can buy lots of technology and feel safe and still get hacked. So how does that happen? So for the last 5 years, E2E have built a security operations centre business. We're now about 45, 50 people operating globally. And I guess through that journey, we've got some stuff to offer that's hopefully useful to you chaps, ladies and girls. So I'm going to start with Mr. Maersk. The reason why I like Maersk as a case study is because when it comes to cyber attacks, this one had lots of damage associated with it, business damage and destruction. Those are words that businesses use that are really good signs that this is important. It wasn't inconvenient, it was damaging to their business. And the first thing that he, as the CEO in the FT, and the first thing that he writes about is that when they got hit by NotPetya, their IT system went down and they couldn't communicate with each other. So I guess rule number one in proactive cyber defense is to have a good response plan where you've got your key IT people on WhatsApp. That's his first lesson, is have a way of contacting your people that doesn't rely on your desktop and your email. The second thing that he says that he's learnt after spending hundreds of millions of pounds trying to fix this problem is that there's no way to prevent an attack. Instead, he's going to focus on isolating and restoring things quicker. So in SOC terms, that means, he's aware that he can buy stuff to try and stop this problem, but that's not where he's going to invest his time. He's going to invest his time in detecting and responding and isolating quicker, because he's learned that that's what he actually needs to do when stuff goes wrong. So I'm not here to talk bad about technology and firewalls and things like that. They're all things you should have. And this isn't about me saying those are bad. What I will highlight to you is what we see day to day. The challenge is that you need these things to be quick to update and not to impact your business. So your AV must be very good at being up to date these days because attacks happen very quickly. And you mustn't rely on them too much. And one of the key questions we like to ask our customers is, do you think all this stuff's working as you expect it to be? Okay, because generally, when we, going the wrong way. When we start a customer and we start to get logs on board, we find that a lot of their protection technology is either out of date, failing to update, or has most of the things, the good things about it, turned off for some valid reason. Here's a typical alert that, new customer on board, and we found that over 1,000 of their desktops had out-of-date AV. And these are the kind of challenges that most organizations come to. And you can invest in lots of technology, but unless you're maintaining it, monitoring it, and making sure it's effective, you're not actually building an effective security operation. You're just putting lots of bits in place. Why are SIMs such a challenge? So before we started this organization, this company, what we used to do is we'd consult in building operations centers. And to do that, we'd buy lots of SIMs and lots of different bits of technology and try and make them work together. That took years and cost a fortune. And actually, a lot of the technology wasn't designed on supporting a security operation. It's not designed to run a 24/7 security operation at all. It's more focused on something else. It's not a supportive tool that can support an analyst to investigate a cyber attack. And we found that a lot of the time we deploy these systems and the analysts would instead do something else, use some homemade stuff instead, because the SIM was just annoying them, basically. So we started from scratch and made our own. And the key differentiator there is that we started by focusing on an analyst and watching what an analyst needs to do to investigate a cyber attack. And I guess that's a theme that I really want to get across, is that when we're talking about proactive defense, you've got technology, but you've also got people and process. And unless all of them are working together, you're not going to be very good at this. There's some other things that you need to be thinking about when you're doing this, but I'm not going to dwell on that. Here's a screen from our main bit of technology. And you'll see it looks more like a help desk or that kind of theme, where you've got events coming in. and it's got an SLA that we're monitoring, and it's got things that are moving in real time, and people are connected to it. And that's more what a security operation looks at. A good cyber operation is more like a help desk. It's a living thing with people in it and a system that operates rather like a help desk. So let's talk about why is there need to be proactive. So I'm going to give you a real example now of what happened a while back when one of our customers got hit by WannaCry through a connection they had to another university. This is a really good example of a customer that had lots of really good technology deployed, next generation AV, best of breed AV, NG firewalls, and they still had a real problem with WannaCry. And it was very impacting on what they did. And what we found was that working as a remote SOC to them, we could see the problem because we could see indicators of the compromise, and we could speak to them on the phone and try and direct them around their estate. But actually all we're doing here is kind of watching the fire burn. You're actually sitting there going, well, this is great, good job we're here, guys, but actually all we're really doing is just pointing you to the next fire, and you're just putting it out and then you're going over here. And I think that's a really typical experience for a lot of customers who have these type of problems. And when that happens, this is the time when you realize you've got really poor asset management and you've got really poor AV coverage, and you realize that it's really quite hard to get new DAT files out quickly. And it's always in the crisis management phase that these problems really rear their heads. So we spend a lot of our time trying to get threat data to customers. And that's a good function of a SOC. And you could say there's a certain aspect of that that's quite proactive. But I just want to talk you through now how our SOC got to hear about WannaCry and what really happens in SOCs when something like this kicks off. So what a SOC is trying to do is get the indicators of compromise, the IP addresses, the domain names, whatever else it is, that indicate this customer has a problem, get hold of them from somewhere, and distribute them to their customers and start looking for that threat. Yeah? Make sense? So to do that, all SOCs use similar methods, actually. But the interesting thing is that the main sort of headline attacks of this nature, all the indicators were like rumors on Twitter. Okay? And the first few minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, this is all people in the industry swapping messages and using things like CISP and Twitter. At this stage, no AV vendors or commercial feeds have this threat intel. So you're really in a race, we call it a scramble, to find accurate IOCs and push them out. Does that make sense? So we used to be called MISP, which I don't know any of you guys have seen MISP before. We're going to go quite technical in this part of the presentation. So what we're doing here is, these are our SOC analysts, and they're getting intelligence, rather getting it from a feed and validating it and pushing it with a button. Or in the case of WannaCry, they were putting them in manually and hitting this big button here to make sure our customers had the indicators deployed so we could look for them. And that went on for hours before we had any type of threat intel or AV signatures that would work. And in a NotPetya or WannaCry situation, that's actually really bad, because that's all over for Maersk. Yeah? So you could argue that their AV and next generation files were absolutely useless to Maersk. That's the kind of point I'm trying to make. And we also learned that unless you can see the whole system end to end, then the problem's going to keep bouncing back. Yeah? So a lot of the time you're looking for IP address indicators and things like that. And if you haven't got visibility in a part of your network, you can't be sure it's gone away. And what we kept finding with WannaCry was it kept popping back. And they found it really hard to get rid of it. And the lesson there was like, well, if we can only see this much of your network, then we can only protect that much of your network. And people miss those basic points. No, we just want the service here because that's what's important. Well, it's being infected from over here, and we need to see what's happening over there. And I guess the biggest two lessons really are, the most important thing is about fast response. That's what's important when these things happen. How do you respond quickly? And you can't rely on your protection technology at this stage. Okay, some good cloud AV, excellent, doing this kind of job, but not everyone's going to be doing that or enabling those features. But there are good technologies in this space. I'm not dissing them. I'm just saying that in reality, this is where we end up. So the key three things that we're building in operation is there's some people. So we've got, I think, over 30 or 40 people in our SOC now, and they're quite heavily trained and they're dedicated to being SOC people. And then you need to get some processes, which is what we call playbooks or runbooks or routines. And you're going to have some technology that helps bring all that together. But it's those three things that mean you can start to get proactive in this field. The first thing you should be doing, if you want to get on the front foot, is make the most of your existing technology. So if you're going to look at building a security operation, you want to proactively stay on top of the game. If you've got good firewalls, good AV, the first thing you need to do is make sure they're working properly. Yeah? Make sure you can get alerts if they're not, and make sure you're listening to what they're telling you. The bottom alert here is, or the top two alerts, are good examples. One's from Palo Alto, one's from Symantec. This is typical. So we're seeing a major organization, and what we're getting out of their logs is Symantec AV has found something bad, but it's allowed it because the policy said just allow it and warn. Palo Alto has seen a threat, and it's bad, but it's allowed it because the policy wasn't set to block. And the assumption is, you see this all the time, the assumption is that someone's going to look at that, right? Therefore, it's okay to put the firewall in monitor mode, but then they don't put the people in to look at it. So they've invested in all this tech, and you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, why did he not put it in block mode? Well, we can't, because we might break something. It's just critical national infrastructure, mate. Oh, all right. So these are the kind of realistic situations. So the good news is, though, that if you start to enable the monitoring of that, then you can get quite good and actually say, okay, problem there, great, let's block it at the firewall, because you need to have human in the loop. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and talk about AI to make you proactive. AI is a solution. It's got its place, but it's not what you need to do day one. Day one is make your existing kit work properly. Okay, and if you do that, you can get a lot of value quickly. How do you respond intelligently? There's a question we often get asked. So I've boiled it down to this. You do something with a low impact to prevent something with a high impact. Make sense? So let's take an example of one of our customers. The laptop seems to have gone off track because user was looking for some discount insurance, drifted onto a site, decided to install some new insurance program, malware. Okay? Our response was to disconnect the laptop from the network, kill its Wi-Fi connection via the Aero Hive. User's getting a bit annoyed because his laptop can't connect to the internet, but he brings it to the help desk. In the time it's taken to do that, we've raised a ticket with the help desk to say, when asset 49 comes in, it's got malware on it. Good? Is that?
Shouldn't allow user to install any software.
This is an example. They shouldn't do. This is what we see. Free Visio. All the network design team want a copy of Visio. Free Visio, free project, Google. Oh, I've got a local admin, I install that. This is nature. They want to get on and do something. It's not, the humans, there's three types, aren't there? I won't go into this, but you've got people who are good and won't do that, people who are well-meaning but want to get on with stuff, yeah, and people who are just bad and will just do stuff to be bad. And anything, second two examples will easily do this kind of thing for the goodwill of getting stuff done. But the point there is that is actually really technically easy to do, really easy. But the bit that stops you is the decision making. And it's getting your organization to agree that kind of playbook. But so what I'm saying to you is don't think about buying lots of stuff right now. Just think about these scenarios and look at Mr. NotPetya, Mr. Maersk, and think about that happening and causing damage. And the quickest thing that could have happened is they could have disconnected the first place, couldn't they? They could have done something, just disconnected that little bit quickly. I mean, my background was doing this at the MOD, and there's an ultimate lesson here, which I can't really go into, but they disconnected the wrong base. They got it wrong, disconnected the wrong operation. But they knew that you have to sacrifice something if you're going to save the bigger picture, right? And that's what you should be thinking about, okay? So in our world, proactive means doing something proactively to stop the problem getting worse, not to stop it in the first place, because I don't think you really can every time. Here's a new way of doing stuff. I want to talk about MITRE because everyone likes it. It's interesting stuff. So say you're quite good at doing SOC and you can get all your existing technology working and you feel pretty confident you can detect most known attacks. You're happy. You're in a good place. Where do you go next? Where do you want to be proactive? Well, ask your question, could we detect this APT? If you're a bank, say to your security team, could we detect Carbonac? Or Carbonac version 4, version 2, a new group. Could we detect them? MITRE is a good way of doing this. So I'll put the web page up, a link here, you can go to MITRE. Who's heard of MITRE? Brilliant, we've got a perfect audience for this. So if you've got good stuff in place, good detection and response capability, and you want to go above and beyond and look at who could be targeting your organization, it is true to say that if you've got Windows 7, there is a generic bunch of techniques that hackers will use to compromise that machine. Same with Solaris, same with whatever else. MITRE is about understanding that. What a SOC can do with that is use it as a way to look for generic indicators that something bad is happening. So for example, if we see credential dumping on a Windows machine, yeah, that would be something that would be bad, isn't it? If someone's doing a command on a Windows box to dump credentials out of the registry or of the memory, surely that's not what they should normally be doing. And that might be some unknown malware, might it? Yeah, if we're looking to study lateral movement techniques, it's the same story, yeah? So MITRE's pretty neat. And what you can do with this is you can put up something like this, which is a threat hunting dashboard. What this is doing is it's saying, well, okay, you can't read this, guys, but in the top left it's saying, I want to detect phishing, for example. And it's red because the SOC doesn't think it's got any data to be able to detect phishing. So that's a red. We can't do threat hunting on phishing because we haven't got any data. Why not? Because we've not got any data. Therefore, the SOC should go and ask for some data so they can detect phishing because they want to detect phishing. Is that making sense? You're going a bit more down the line. It might be saying, okay, let's detect someone doing credential dumping. Well, it's amber because we can see some data that looks like that. We're collecting the right type of data to find credential dumping. And it's got a little lifeboat on it because there's 182 instances of that happening. So why don't we start our threat hunt by pretending we're an APT now, which is the next bit. So now I can say, okay, if I'm going to be Deep Panda, then which of these techniques relate to them? Let's pretend we're Deep Panda and try and work out if we could get on this network, or whether we could detect the techniques used by this APT. Does that make sense? I'm going to continue with it because it kind of makes more sense as I progress. So you're now looking at the generic things that happen on machines to indicate there's an unknown threat happening. Yeah, lateral movement, people going to the command line, people doing things. And when you see a single attack, you can also use the same matrix in the background to link things together. So the little skulls or APT groups who are known to use that method. And then the little blue things are the types of techniques and tactics they use. And if they start to join together and pivot to a single asset, then you might want to start threat hunting on that asset because stuff's happening. Is that making sense? Let's move on a bit. If you want to be good at SOC, it's true to say that you're going to have to be good at asset management. And that is boring. You're going to be good at vulnerability management, software inventory. You're going to have playbooks. If I was trying to build a proactive SOC in your organization, I would start by thinking about all these different things that you probably haven't thought about, not how good my protection technology was. I'll be thinking about all these other bits that make a puzzle and start to put in a way that we can measure how good the operation is at doing things. Because you might be worried about a certain vulnerability with a certain piece of software. If you've got no idea who's running that bit of software, where it's installed, then you're not going to be very good at detecting that, are you? You're not going to be able to give a so this is why these things are important. There's quite a few things in that puzzle, and only one of them is next generation AV or firewalls. I want you to get that message across. There's stuff to think about. A lot of it's process and procedure. Right, let's do some MITRE examples. Let's pick on some easy targets. Equifax. So this is from the Twitter. Apparently, I don't know if it's true or not, but there were 30 web shells for 6 months. That means that someone exploited their web server, they got a remote shell on it, and they sat there running the command line and doing stuff. Okay, in this case, they had a vulnerability they should have known about, true. Okay, but what if it wasn't a vulnerability they should have known about, and there was a unique, new, unknown vulnerability they exploited your website with that spent years building to target you? Well, interestingly, this is what the hackers did. They typed this command, who am I? All of them, actually, according to the FireEye report, I think it was, or W, who am I? Once they had a shell on it, they typed the command W. Anyone know why they would do that? Yeah, see who else is on the shell. Yeah? So, to see who you are, am I root, am I this, but also who else is on this box, because they might want to get the other APT off, or the admin off. Does that make sense? So actually, there's a MITRE technique for this. It's called system owner discovery. And if you monitor for people running the command W, you could get an alert. Sounds good? You might then want to have a playbook that says, here's what to do if you see this command being run. Check it's not your valid support team. Check its source IP address is not internal, is internal. You're going to want to have this is a ticket that's going through this. But fundamentally, you're going to want to know that this IP address logged on as user hacker1 and type W. If that IP address is in China or Russia, then you're going to know you've been hacked, right? So that's how simple, potentially, Equifax could have realized they'd been hacked, even if they didn't know or hadn't bought any technology. You need to know what the things to do. You know, what should you be looking at? What should you be worried about? They have lots of next generation technology. They've got all the Gartner quadrant ticked, yet they didn't notice all that stuff. So these are lessons that we all should learn. If you've got good end-to-end network and host data, you can pivot from that and look at who it was that ran the program. This is about having good logs about process execution and things like that. People have been telling you this for years. Yeah. Who's had a GPG13 and logging guides like that? People have been telling you to log process execution for years. Well, here's why, because I can find out that Rob Demain, that's me, ran putty and SSH that box as hacker1 and ran W for this demo. Yeah, do you see how that kind of makes sense? And you can resolve these incidents quite good if you're a SOC, if you have this type of data. All of it is freely collectible by any operating system, by the way. You don't need agents for this. It's out-the-box stuff, pretty much. Let's do another one. This is an APT. Who remembers Ccleaner? I did a talk about Ccleaner. I think it was in London, but Ccleaner, I've got a whole thing on that because it's fascinating. Because it got into the supply chain. And no one really knows what happened because it's a bit shady. But the thing is, they got bad software into real good software. And then everyone installed that software, not knowing there was bad software hidden inside it. That is a real problem. Real problem. You bundle up some software with malware in it, sign it and whack it out. We're going to run this stuff as admin because it's a disk cleaner program. Millions of people installed this. You probably still got it, the patch version. Anyway, so our SOC builds fake Ccleaners now. Right, and puts them in things like system internal software and then runs it and makes bad stuff to work out if we can detect stuff. So let's just say that somebody has infiltrated your supply chain, some software. This is how NotPetya started, in fact, isn't it, with the account software me.doc. You remember the police storming the place in Ukraine? Remember all that? Well, that was because their software got hacked and they distributed something bad in their software. This is an example of that. There are many ways you could detect the software is not legitimate. This is quite an easy one, which means that whoever made this invalid bit of software didn't sign it properly. Yeah, so we could have an alert that says someone's running untrusted software. We could equally have an alert that says someone's running some software we've not seen before. Or the MD5 of this software is different to the software everyone else is running. Why is that? There's many ways into this conversation, isn't there? We don't need to know that software is bad. We just need to know that something's odd about it. If everyone runs it and they've all got one checksum, but this one hasn't, look at it. Doesn't take much thought, that, does it? And then have a look at what else it does. Oh, okay. So this is the kind of scenario where you're here, you've got this ticket, and you're looking at some attack that's on this asset, and it's linking you to lots of other activity that could be all these APTs, and it's highlighting the fact that over the last 6 months, all these weird things have been happening around this box. Okay, and this is one of our test boxes, and what happens is the SOC will make this stuff and leave it running and see if anyone notices. And quite often, it takes a really quite mature SOC to find this, trust me. Because what happened is, I'll tell you what, the reason why you miss APTs in SOCs is quite simple. Right? What happens is, alerts come up and they look at them, and they're clever people, and they close it down. They do some analysis and they close it down. 3 weeks later, when they're on holiday, another alert comes up, slightly different. But someone else is on shift. And they go, yeah, it's nice, I'll close it down. And what they don't see is a long-term pattern emerging. Yeah, long-term pattern. And this is the kind of way you can go back in time and go, hang on a minute, if we can just look at what's been happening over the picture, this unsigned process is linked to all sorts of strange activity. And what you can do with that is follow the breadcrumbs, if you like. So what we have here is we're looking at an unsigned process being run here. This is the actual log of the thing. This is the checksums we're getting from it, and it's not signed. If you have good network visibility, you then want to see what this process is calling. So now you've got a bit of software calling out to the internet on port 80. Why is my software talking to the internet? Yeah, so then you want to look at why that software is talking to the internet and what it's doing. And it's doing gets and puts. Dig a bit deeper, and it's got a payload in it of some description. It's binary, isn't it? Everyone can see that's binary. And all that stuff can be done with a click of a button if you're thinking like this. And why you're thinking like this is because MITRE has helped get you to the point of thinking about what an attacker is actually doing rather than relying on your signatures and your next generation AV. Yeah? This just runs and Windows Defender hasn't got a clue. Anyone can do this, right? Speak to Stuart. You know, 'cause how many cyber challenge people can make malware like that? Lots of people. Not difficult, but if you're thinking like the attacker and looking for these things, then we'll detect them at some point. And that's what we mean by proactive, and that's where I'm going to end the piece, okay? So that looks bad. Click the incident button, and this is when your playbook comes into play. A minute. We're done. So I'm done now, Mark. Yeah. This is when you have a pre-rehearsed playbook, and this is where your automation comes in. You've already agreed it with all the boss. You're going to send your emails, raise your service tickets, and you're going to do something to stop this attack. So final piece for me then, really. When we engage with customers, we're always saying, let's just take a step back from a minute. Let's examine what you've got already and make it work well, and let's look what the gaps are and try and make things better. So we never try and talk to them about silver bullets are going to fix everything. And we talk about maturity journeys, and what we're really talking about is how to make a mature security operation. That's it for me.